You can teach a dog to track a scent, chase down a suspect, or sit still through gunfire. But you can't teach a dog to lie. That's why when Duke, a 5-year-old retired canine with more scars than medals, walked into the Patterson family's living room and refused to take his eyes off a picture frame on the wall, Detective Anna Keller knew something was wrong. Not maybe wrong, not worth checking out later wrong. Something in that house was hiding a truth, and the dog could smell it. It had been 18 days since 16-year-old Emily Patterson disappeared from her suburban home in Pine Bluff, Pennsylvania. No signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle, no ransom note. Nothing. She'd simply vanished. Her parents, Ted and Melissa Patterson, said she went for a run that morning and never came back. The town rallied. Search parties combed the woods and news vans parked outside their driveway for over a week. But the case had gone cold. No leads, no suspects. That's when Detective Keller was brought in, and she didn't come alone. She brought Duke. He wasn't the shiny, clean-cut kind of police dog they used in PR videos. Duke was retired military, reassigned to law enforcement through a pilot program for dogs with combat PTSD. He had a torn ear, a cloudy left eye, and a jagged scar across his rib cage that looked like it had a story all its own. But his nose still worked like it was made by God for one purpose: to find what others missed. Keller had worked with enough animals to trust Duke's instincts more than half the detectives on her force. And on that crisp Monday morning, as they entered the Pattersons' seemingly perfect colonial-style home, she could already feel it in the air. The mother cried. The father shook hands too tightly. The family dog, a docile golden retriever, barely lifted its head from the couch. The house smelled like lavender cleaner and stress. They started upstairs, checking the girl's bedroom. Nothing unusual. Neat bed, open laptop, posters of indie bands on the walls, a few textbooks left open on the desk. But when Duke reached the living room on their way out, he froze. His body stiffened, ears perked, eyes locked. On the wall above this fireplace was a large landscape painting, a meadow at sunset. Very peaceful, very forgettable. But Duke wouldn't move. He growled softly, low in his throat, not like he sensed danger, more like something didn't sit right. Keller glanced at him, then at the painting. "What is it, boy?" He didn't look away. She walked over, gently placing her hand on the frame. Solid wood. Heavy. It didn't look suspicious. "Melissa," she called to the mother. "Mind if I ask where you got this?" "Oh, that old thing?" Melissa said, wringing her hands. "Ted's aunt painted it years ago. We've had it forever." Keller raised an eyebrow. "May I take it down for a closer look?" Melissa hesitated, just a flicker, then smiled. "Of course." Keller lifted the frame carefully and looked behind it. Nothing. Just drywall. She gave the wall a gentle tap. Hollow. Duke stopped growling but kept staring. Keller made a mental note. Revisit this. But with no warrant and no visible cause, she couldn't tear open a family's living room based on a hunch, even if it was a very furry, very growly one. So she thanked the Pattersons, logged the visit, and drove back to the precinct with Duke. They hadn't found Emily. But something in that house wasn't what it seemed. For the next few days, Keller couldn't get the image out of her head. Duke, frozen in front of that painting like it was trying to speak. She reviewed the case file again. Timelines, statements, phone pings. Nothing added up. Emily's phone last pinged from a nearby trail an hour after she supposedly left for a run. But there were no witnesses, no cameras. And there was something else off. Ted Patterson, the father, had changed his story twice in interviews. First, he said he was home when Emily left. Later, he said he was at the hardware store. But no receipt, no witness, no camera confirmed that. Keller leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "You ready to go back, Duke?" He wagged his tail once. That Wednesday, Keller knocked on the Patterson door again. Melissa answered, looking tired and pale. "Just a follow-up," Keller said. Something didn't sit right. She didn't mention Duke's behavior. She didn't need to. Inside, everything looked the same scented candles, the same forced smiles. But the painting was gone. "Where's the meadow?" Keller asked, her voice steady. "Oh, we took it down," Melissa said, blinking too fast. "Ted said it was crooked, and he wanted to hang something else. Why?" Keller's pulse jumped. She stepped into the living room, eyes scanning the wall. Now, in the painting's place, was a large family portrait. Smiling faces, warm lighting. But Duke didn't care about the smiles. He growled again. Only this time not at the wall, but at the portrait. If stories like this keep you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals, where real-life heroes walk on four legs and instincts solve the mysteries humans can't. Melissa, Keller said, voice calm but firm. I'm going to need to see the painting. Where is it? I think Ted put it in the garage, she said slowly. I can get it. I'll go with you. They stepped into the garage, cluttered, dark. Against the far wall, half covered in an old sheet, was the painting. Keller walked over and flipped it around. There, screwed into the back of the canvas frame, was a small magnetic key. Her heart skipped. Do you know what this unlocks? No, Melissa said too quickly. That's not ours. I swear, I don't know. Melissa, Keller said gently, I have a trained detection dog who won't stop reacting to your living room wall. Your daughter is missing. You need to tell me the truth. Tears welled up in this woman's eyes. I didn't know Ted put something back there. Put what? I don't know, she whispered. But Keller already knew. She called for a forensic warrant that afternoon. The next day, with permission granted, a tech crew arrived and cut open the drywall behind the painting's original location. Inside was a small steel wall safe. Duke sat calmly in the corner, watching. Keller stared at the locked door, heart pounding. We're going to open it, today, because sometimes the truth doesn't scream. It waits behind a wall covered in paint and lies, until a dog who's seen too much refuses to look away. You'd think that once a hidden wall safe was discovered inside the home of a missing girl, things would move quickly. That justice would sweep in like a storm. But in Pine Bluff, Pennsylvania, things moved slower, especially when the family had money, lawyers, and local connections. Detective Anna Keller had seen it before. The delay, the excuses, the polite refusals. But what she hadn't seen before was a dog who refused to budge until a secret was forced into daylight. And Duke wasn't done yet. The morning after the safe was found, Keller stood in the Pattersons' living room, arms crossed, watching a forensic locksmith drill open the steel door. Ted Patterson wasn't home, some emergency work call, his wife claimed. But Melissa hovered nearby, pale and jittery, clenching and unclenching her hands like she wanted to pray but forgot how. The moment the safe clicked open, Duke let out a sharp bark, once, then sat down. Inside was a neatly stacked pile of documents, a velvet pouch, and a single flash drive. No weapons, no cash, just paper and plastic. Keller pulled on gloves and began carefully removing the contents, laying each item onto a clean forensic tray. The first item was a manila folder labeled in block letters, Emily, Confidential. Inside, printed photographs. The first few looked normal. Emily with her school friends, a track meet, a birthday party. But something felt staged. Then came a photo that made Keller's blood chill. It showed Emily sitting at a coffee shop with an older man, maybe mid-50s, balding, with glasses. His hand rested gently on her shoulder, but she wasn't smiling. Her body language was stiff, her eyes downcast. It didn't feel like a proud uncle. It felt wrong. The next photo was worse. Emily, same man, inside what looked like a motel room. He sat on the edge of the bed. She stood near the door. Her arms were crossed tightly. Again, no smile. She looked trapped in the frame. Keller stopped flipping. What the hell? She whispered. Melissa, standing behind her, covered her mouth. That's not real. That can't be real. Ted wouldn't. He said those were just old photos from her school project. A school project? Keller turned to her. You're telling me your daughter's school assignment involved motel room photography with strange older men? Melissa shook her head, panicked. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I never saw those. Ted said he handled her senior project. Her knees gave out and she collapsed into a nearby chair. I didn't look. Keller glanced down at Duke, who watched Melissa, then slowly turned his gaze back toward the safe. There was more. The velvet pouch held two things, a small silver locket and a folded note torn at the edges. Inside the locket was a photo, not of Emily, but of a different girl. Brunette, same age, same eyes. On the back of the photo, Molly 2011. Keller stared at it for a long moment. That name wasn't in the Patterson file. She opened the note. Scrawled in quick, anxious handwriting were just 3 lines. I know what he did. She tried to tell me. If anything happens to me, find the dog. Keller read it twice. She didn't know what she expected. But that last line? She glanced again at Duke. The dog didn't move, didn't blink, but he knew, he'd always known. The flash drive was password protected. Back at the precinct, Keller handed it over to their digital forensics team. Prioritize this, she told them. I don't care if you have to pull every tech out of traffic cams, crack it. While she waited, she went back to the missing persons board. She pulled Emily's file and laid the Lockett photo next to it. Then she pulled cold case reports for Molly Anderson, a 15-year-old who went missing in 2011, 3 towns over. Never found, case inactive. But now, a photo in a locket hidden in the home of another missing girl. It wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern. That night, Keller couldn't sleep. She kept seeing Emily's eyes in those photos. Not scared, not even crying. Just empty. Like she'd already said everything she needed to say. And no one had listened. She thought about Melissa, a woman either deeply in denial or drowning in guilt. And she thought about Ted Patterson, the one person Duke didn't trust. She called her captain the next morning. I want eyes on Ted Patterson. Full background sweep. Anna, he sighed, you're chasing smoke. No, she said. I'm following a dog who's been right every time. Later that day, the digital team cracked the drive. It held only 2 video files, both short, both grainy. The first opened with the static buzz. Then, a dim room. A camera on a nightstand. Emily's voice, barely audible. You said it would stop. Then a male voice. Shut the door! End of file. Keller stared at the screen, her stomach turning. The second video was even shorter. Emily facing the camera this time. Alone. She looked straight ahead, eyes wide. If I go missing, she whispered, he'll say I ran, but I didn't. He's the one who... The video cut out. File corrupted. Keller stood frozen for several moments. Then slowly she turned to Duke. You saw this before any of us, didn't you? The dog let out a quiet breath and laid his head on her boot. She called the captain again. I need a warrant for Ted Patterson's financials, and I want motel surveillance pulled from March 3rd through the 7th. Cross-check it with his work records. He's been lying. I hope you're right, Keller, the captain said, because you're about to walk into a political minefield. I don't care if he's running for mayor, she snapped. This girl left a breadcrumb trail, and a dog picked it up. Now it's our job to follow it. That afternoon, Keller went back to the Patterson house alone. Melissa answered the door, face blotchy, eyes red. He's not here. I know, Keller said, but you are. And I think it's time we talked about the kind of man you married. Melissa hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside, the house felt colder now. The warmth had vanished. The photo over the fireplace was gone. The wall was bare. I lied, Melissa said, voice barely a whisper. About the painting. About the safe. About so much. Keller stayed quiet. I was afraid, she continued. Ted controls everything. The money, the image. He said if Emily told anyone, she'd be the one in trouble. Tell me about Molly, Keller said. Melissa blinked. Who? The locket, the photo, the year 2011. Melissa swallowed hard. That was before me. Ted was married once before. His first wife died in a car crash. They had a daughter, Molly. Did Molly go missing? Melissa's eyes widened and she slowly sat down. He said she ran away. There was a whole search, but no one ever found her. Then one day he just stopped talking about her. Said she'd made her choice. Keller's pulse thudded in her ears. I think, Melissa's voice cracked. I think Emily found something out. About Molly, about him. And then she vanished too. Keller walked outside to her car and sat behind the wheel for a long time. She looked at Duke, curled quietly in the back seat. You don't track people, she murmured. You track secrets. And in that house, the walls were full of them. It was almost funny in a sick kind of way. The man smiled in every picture, every staged family Christmas card, every Facebook post, every town hall meet and greet. Ted Patterson, local businessman, charity donor, volunteer youth coach. You could scroll his online life and never see a shadow. But Duke didn't need a shadow to know something was wrong. The dog didn't care about smiling pictures. He barked at the truth behind them. By Thursday morning, Detective Anna Keller had the full background report on Ted Patterson, and the cracks were showing. His real estate business wasn't nearly as successful as he claimed. 2 LLCs linked to his name had been dissolved after fraud investigations, both quietly buried with settlements. He had a sealed juvenile record from his late teens. Juvenile court, inaccessible without a court order. But the label was there. Worse, 2 unsolved missing teen reports, one from 2011, one from 2008, overlapped with places Ted had lived before marrying Melissa. All girls. All between 14 and 17. All disappeared with no trace. Emily wasn't the first. She might just be the one who left a trail. The forensic lab had finally restored the corrupted video from the flash drive. Keller sat alone in the evidence room, headphones over her ears, watching the screen. Emily's voice, quiet and steady, came through. "If you're watching this, I'm gone. And I didn't run away. He told me I had no proof, but I kept it. I kept everything." She turned the camera toward the desk. A series of notebooks. A torn photo. He did the same thing to her. The girl in the locket. I found her file in his cabinet. Her name was Molly. She was my half-sister. Keller froze. "He said she died, but I found the truth. She tried to get away." Emily's voice broke, just slightly. "He's not who he says he is." Then she looked straight into the lens. "And if Duke is still alive, follow him. He always knew." Keller didn't sleep that night. She sat in her apartment with Duke curled at her feet, the weight of the case pressing down on her chest. The girl had been screaming into silence, but no one had listened, except the dog, and now it was time to act. Friday morning, she stood in front of the judge, file in hand. "I'm requesting a full property search warrant for the Patterson residence, all vehicles and business holdings, including off-site storage," she said, voice steady. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Based on what?" "Testimony from the missing girl in a recovered video," Keller said. "Photos of her with an unidentified adult male in a private motel room. Evidence of other missing minors connected to the subject's previous addresses, and a dog that has identified multiple concealed evidence locations independently." The judge squinted. "You're putting a dog on the stand now?" Keller leaned forward. "Your Honor, that dog's already done more work on this case than 3 patrol units combined, and the girl said it herself. Follow him. I'm not ignoring her again." A pause. Then the judge signed the warrant. "God help you if you're wrong, Keller." That afternoon, a team of 8 officers executed the search. Ted Patterson was not at home. But Keller was, and so was Duke. The first place Duke returned to was the fireplace. The portrait that had replaced the meadow painting was gone now, but behind the empty frame, embedded in the drywall, Keller found a second hidden compartment. Inside, a motel receipt, a burner phone, and a small notebook. The notebook was Emily's. Her name was written in the corner in slanted blue pen. Inside were lists, names, places, motel addresses, license plates. One stood out, Unit 7, Ridgeview Storage, paid in cash, no ID, bingo. Detectives arrived at the Ridgeview facility within the hour. The manager didn't want trouble. "Sure, Mr. Patterson rents one of ours," he said, flipping through records. "Always paid in cash, always polite." He led them to Unit 7, metal door, rusted padlock. Keller cut the lock. Inside, furniture covered in tarps, boxes, a mattress wrapped in plastic, and a crate, dog-sized, stained. Duke growled. They found old Polaroids in one box, none labeled, different girls, different towns. They found the same locket, with Molly's name, in a drawer. They found duct tape, zip ties, clothes, and in the far corner under a folded tarp, they found Emily's running shoes. Back at the house, Melissa sat shaking in the kitchen. "He kept a storage unit?" she whispered. "I didn't even know he had one." Keller didn't answer. She looked around the kitchen. Spotless, sunny, lies baked into every surface. "We have enough now," she said quietly. "We'll issue the warrant for his arrest before sundown." "What happens next?" Melissa asked, tears running down her cheeks. "Next?" Keller stood. "We find your daughter." But Ted Patterson didn't wait to be arrested. At 5:22 p.m., local PD received a call from a neighbor. They saw Patterson leaving in a gray Ford Explorer, speeding. By the time Keller was notified, he was gone. An APB was issued. Plates went out. But it was like he'd vanished. The man who smiled in every portrait had finally shown his real face. That night, Keller sat with Duke in her squad car outside the Patterson house, watching the news unfold on TV through her windshield. Reporters speculated. Neighbors gasped. Everyone asked, how could no one have known? But Keller knew. They had known, deep down they had always known. They'd just chosen not to look. Only the dog had stared long enough to see through the painting. Only the dog had refused to turn away. As the clock ticked toward midnight, Keller got a call. A motel on the state line reported a disturbance. A man matching Patterson's description had gotten into an argument with the front desk, left behind in a rush, left a bag behind. Inside, a laptop, a loaded pistol, a folder labeled exit plan, and a single photo. Emily, still alive, tied to a chair, eyes open. The background, hard to place. A basement, maybe, or a warehouse. The timestamp, just 2 days old. Keller stared at the photo for a long time. Then she looked at Duke. "You ready?" she whispered. The dog sat up, alert. "Good," she said, "because we're not done yet. In every missing person's case, there's a moment. A line you cross, when it stops being an investigation and becomes a race." Detective Anna Keller crossed that line the moment she saw the photo of Emily, tied to a chair, wide-eyed and alive, just 2 days old. There was no more protocol, no more waiting, no more hope that this was just some misunderstood runaway case. Emily Patterson was still out there, and the man who took her had a head start. It was just after 1 a.m. when Keller walked into the Pine Bluff precinct, Duke at her side. The mood inside had changed. Nobody made small talk. Nobody asked if they were sure. They were sure now. The motel where Ted Patterson had left his bag, the photo, the gun, the exit plan folder, was 20 miles east, just past the state line. That gave him a 6-hour lead at best. The team gathered around the monitor in the war room as Keller laid the printed photo on the table. Emily's background, concrete walls, exposed pipes, harsh overhead lighting, looked industrial, cold, unfinished. "She's underground," Keller said. "Basement or sublevel, maybe a storm shelter. Could be an old building," someone added. "Maybe a warehouse. You see that rust near the pipe joint?" Keller nodded. "Get me a list of every property Ted's name is connected to. Not just the active ones. I want the rentals, the old flip houses, the ones listed under shell companies. Every asset in the past 15 years. The officers scattered. She looked down at Duke, now resting at her feet. He hadn't barked once since the photo. He just waited. Quiet, still, ready. "Come on, partner," Keller whispered. "Let's go find her." By 5 a.m., they had a list of 7 possible properties. 4 were ruled out immediately. Sold, demoed, or occupied. That left 3, a cabin in the woods near Ridge Creek, a warehouse near the rail yard, and an old hunting lodge about 45 minutes north. All of them isolated. All of them within an hour of the motel where Ted ditched his bag. Keller chose the warehouse first. She drove out before sunrise. Duke in the back, window cracked. The rail yard was deserted this time of day, still and silent except for the distant metallic clinks of a train being uncoupled. The warehouse door was rusted shut. Took 2 officers with a crowbar to break it open. Inside, stacks of old furniture, a broken vending machine, and a lingering smell of mildew. No stairs, no basement, no sign of life. But Duke sniffed every inch of it. Nothing. On to the next. The Ridge Creek cabin was deep in the woods. A long dirt driveway, half overgrown with brush, led to a sagging wooden structure with blacked-out windows. They entered carefully, guns drawn. The kitchen reeked of mold. Rodents scurried across the floor. In the back, a trap door to a crawl space. Keller's heart jumped, but when they opened it, it was shallow. Just dirt. No room for a person. No Emily. Again, Duke sniffed around. Again, he didn't react. Still not right. That left the lodge. A 45-minute drive through winding back roads took them to a rundown property near Bear Hollow, a small hunting lodge Ted Patterson had briefly owned during a failed ecotourism business venture. The deed had changed hands 3 times, but hadn't been occupied in years. The front porch sagged. The driveway was cracked. The mailbox was split open. But the generator was still humming. That was the first red flag. Keller approached the door slowly, one hand on her firearm, the other gesturing to Duke, who stayed close but silent. The door was unlocked. Inside it smelled like bleach and fear. The furniture was dusty, unused, but the fridge was running. The heater was on. A half-empty bottle of water sat on the counter. Someone had been here, or still was. She moved room to room, clearing corners, checking doors. Then she saw it. In the pantry, behind the shelves, a metal door with a keypad. Not standard issue for a hunting lodge. "Found something?" she called in. "Basement access, it's locked." They tried codes, nothing. Until Keller typed in Molly. The lock clicked. The door creaked open. The stairs were steep, concrete. The air grew colder as they descended. Damp. Metallic. At the bottom, a long, narrow hallway. One light flickered overhead. Then, Duke froze. Low growl, tail stiff, eyes locked on a steel door at the end of the hall. Keller crept forward. Her fingers hovered over the latch. She nodded to the officer behind her. 3, 2, 1. The door burst open. "Emily!" Keller shouted. The girl blinked hard in the sudden light, her hands zip-tied, legs trembling. But she was alive. She was alive. Keller rushed to her, cutting the plastic restraints. Emily collapsed forward into her arms, sobbing. "You came!" "We've got you," Keller whispered. "You're safe now." Duke stepped forward, tail wagging gently. Emily reached out and touched his head. "You found me." Keller smiled through tears. "No, you left a trail. He just knew how to follow it." They got her out fast. EMTs checked her vitals. She was dehydrated, bruised, but conscious. Her first words to the medics were, "Please don't take me near him." But Ted Patterson wasn't there. He was still out there. And Keller knew he wasn't running. He was hunting for a way out. Back at the station, Emily gave a full statement. She told them everything. About the secrets, about the threats, about Molly. How she found a hidden folder in her dad's study. How she confronted him. How he told her if she opened her mouth, she'd end up like her sister. She ran. He chased her, drugged her, locked her in the basement until she calmed down. He'd been planning a relocation when Keller showed up. The photo? A message. A threat. A final warning to stay away. But it backfired. The manhunt went national within 24 hours. Ted's face was plastered across news broadcasts, FBI bulletins, and digital billboards. But there was no sign of him. He'd wiped his devices, drained his accounts, gone underground. Until Duke picked up a new scent. It was a week later, during a follow-up visit to one of Ted's former properties, an abandoned warehouse slated for demolition. Keller brought Duke just in case. And once again, he stopped. Not at a wall, not at a photo. At a car, covered in tarp, parked in the far corner. He barked twice. They moved in. Under the tarp, a stolen vehicle. Inside, Ted Patterson. Unconscious, barely breathing. An empty pill bottle in the cup holder. He'd tried to escape. Not by fleeing, but by vanishing. But Duke didn't let him. They took him in. He was charged with kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, child endangerment, obstruction, and linked to 2 reopened cold cases involving minors. The locket found in the safe matched DNA to Molly Patterson, officially listed as a homicide investigation. The trial would come months later. But for now, Keller sat on the bench outside the courthouse, Duke's head resting on her knee as Emily spoke to reporters. She was brave, poised, but her hands trembled when she talked. "He told me no one would believe me," she said. "He told me if I disappeared, people would say I ran away." She looked down at Duke. "But this dog, he knew I didn't." Keller scratched behind Duke's ear. "He never stopped looking," she said, and that made all the difference. Some cases don't end when the suspect is caught. They unravel slowly, like an old sweater, thread by painful thread. And sometimes, what's exposed underneath is worse than anyone imagined. That was the case with Ted Patterson. The man who once smiled at charity galas and sat on the school board now wore an orange jumpsuit and sat behind bulletproof glass. And the world was watching. Detective Anna Keller had seen trials before, but this one felt different. It wasn't just about a kidnapping. It was about betrayal in plain sight, and the system that let it happen again and again. And standing at the center of it all, never flinching, never letting his eyes stray, was Duke, the German shepherd who never looked away. 3 weeks after Emily Patterson's rescue, the courthouse was packed. Media vans lined the street. Protesters with signs stood on either side of the steps, some demanding justice, others insisting the accusations were a mistake or political. Inside, the energy was thick. Ted Patterson sat at the defense table, clean-shaven, suit-pressed, trying to look like the father everyone once admired. But the jury didn't look at the suit. They looked at the evidence. And the girl who stood to speak. Emily Patterson, 17, took the stand in a powder blue sweater and jeans. Her voice wavered at first, but not from weakness. She was scared, yes, but she was also angry. She told the court about the secret folder, about Molly, about how her father had told her that asking questions was dangerous, about how the moment she pushed too far, she was drugged and taken to a locked basement where the only light came from a flickering bulb and the only sound was her own breath. And eventually, her dog barking behind a wall somewhere far above. She told them about the flash drive, the photo she left, the whispered line to the camera, "Follow the dog." And she told them how the police didn't believe her at first, how even her mother looked the other way. but the dog didn't. "He never stopped looking," Emily said, her voice growing steadier. "When the adults missed it, he didn't. He barked at a wall until someone listened." She glanced toward the back of the courtroom. Duke sat quietly beside Keller. And for the first time since entering that courtroom, the jury smiled. The prosecution brought the evidence. The flash drive, the photos, the motel receipts, the storage unit inventory, the digital records linking Ted Patterson's shell companies to properties where other girls had gone missing. They played the videos, they traced the burner phones, they pulled up the note in the velvet pouch. "I know what he did. She tried to tell me, if anything happens to me, find the dog." Keller remembered that moment in the evidence room, reading those words for the first time. She hadn't understood it then. Now the whole country did. By day 3 of the trial, reporters were calling Duke the dog detective, and social media exploded. Justice for Emily trended for nearly a week, but Keller didn't care about hashtags. She cared about what came next, because there was still one missing piece. At the request of the district attorney, Duke was allowed to walk the courtroom after hours, under supervision, to confirm scent reactions to evidence and photos. It was unusual, unorthodox, but Duke had already proven himself. And on a quiet Thursday evening, in a silent, empty courtroom, Duke walked slowly past a table of evidence boxes and stopped at one labeled Cold Cases Anderson file. He sniffed, circled it once, and let out a low, unmistakable growl. Keller's breath caught. She opened the box. Inside, Molly's personal effects. The original photo from the locket, her sweater, a bracelet, a cracked cell phone. Duke didn't bark, but he sat, and he didn't move. Back in the precinct, Keller reviewed the cold case again. Molly Anderson, age 15, disappeared in 2011. At the time, her mother, Ted's ex-wife, had claimed Molly ran away. No signs of foul play. But now, the locket, the dog's reaction, the matching handwriting in the note found in the safe. Keller looked again at the torn edges of Molly's last letter, the one written to a teacher. The phrase, "He watches me when I sleep." The same handwriting was found on the note hidden in the velvet pouch. They had always assumed it was Emily's, but the stroke slant matched Molly's, not Emily's. Molly had written it. Emily had just found it. That changed everything. Keller submitted the note to the DA. Within hours, new charges were filed. Murder in the suspected death of Molly Anderson, based on circumstantial and forensic evidence. It was the first time Ted Patterson's face shifted in court. He didn't speak, but his hands trembled. Then came Melissa Patterson. She took the stand with her shoulders curled inward, voice soft. She admitted she had overlooked things, that Ted had told her stories about his troubled daughter from a previous marriage, that he said Emily was acting out and needed discipline, and she believed him. "I was blind," Melissa whispered. "He convinced me my own daughter was unstable." She turned to the judge, but she was the only one who ever saw the truth, and I helped hide it. The courtroom was silent, except for Duke, who let out a quiet exhale, almost like relief. If this story moves you, and you believe in the power of animals to change lives, don't forget to subscribe to Heroes for Animals. These stories deserve to be heard. Closing arguments were short. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. They found Ted Patterson guilty on all counts: kidnapping, child endangerment, obstruction of justice, possession of illicit materials, and in the final blow, second-degree murder in the case of Molly Anderson, based on newly submitted evidence and testimony. His sentence, life in prison without parole. No plea deals. No leniency. The man who once controlled his image with charm and lies would now spend his remaining years under the very same silence he used to trap others. Outside the courthouse, Keller stood beside Emily and Melissa. Reporters surged. Microphones were raised, but Emily spoke just one sentence before walking away. "He tried to erase us, but the dog remembered." 2 weeks later, Keller received a letter. Handwritten, no return address. It read, "I wasn't brave. The dog was. He barked so loud the world finally listened. I hope more people start listening to the ones who can't speak." There was no signature, but Keller knew who it was from. In the months that followed, Emily returned to school. Quietly. She began volunteering at the local animal shelter, walking retired canines and helping train rescue dogs. Duke became a legend, invited to speak, or rather sit proudly, at conferences, schools, and even a ceremony at the state capitol where he was awarded the Heroic Service Medal. But he didn't care about the medal. He cared about Emily. And when she bent down to hug him after the ceremony, he wagged his tail once and rested his head on her shoulder, the same way he had in the basement hallway just before they opened the door. Sometimes it takes a trained investigator to solve a case. Sometimes it takes years of evidence and legal work. And sometimes it takes a dog who just won't stop looking at a wall until the truth comes crashing out from behind it. There's something quiet about justice. It doesn't shout or wave its hands. It settles in slowly, like sunlight through the trees after a storm. For Detective Anna Keller, justice didn't come in the sound of a gavel or the news crews packing up outside the courthouse. It came in the way Emily Patterson smiled, really smiled, for the first time in months, and in the way Duke finally stopped staring at the wall. A month had passed since the trial ended. Ted Patterson was locked away in a maximum security prison in western Pennsylvania. The home he once filled with secrets had been sold, the safe ripped from the drywall, the paintings boxed up and stored as evidence. And Emily? She was rebuilding. She'd enrolled in online classes, slowly returning to normalcy, or at least a new version of it. She walked to the corner store now. She started baking again. Her walls were no longer blank. She even hung up one of her own paintings, a blurry sunset over a field. "I think I finally understand," she told Keller one afternoon. "What he took from me wasn't just time or safety. He took my voice, and I'm getting it back." Keller smiled. "You already have." Duke had officially retired from active service. His last mission, the one that mattered most, was over. The department offered him a quiet home in the country, but Keller knew where he truly belonged. She brought the paperwork to Emily's house herself, holding the adoption form in one hand and Duke's worn leather leash in the other. "I think he's already chosen," Keller said as she passed the leash over. Emily dropped to her knees, hugging Duke tightly. "Are you sure?" Keller looked at the dog. "He was never mine. I just followed him where he led me." Duke leaned into Emily's arms, tail thumping against the floor. 2 weeks later, something unexpected arrived in the mail. An invitation from the governor's office. Emily, Keller, and Duke were asked to attend the Pennsylvania State Heroes Ceremony, an annual event recognizing bravery in the line of duty. Duke's name was listed at the top. The ceremony was held at the Capitol Rotunda in Harrisburg, packed with local leaders, veterans, police officers, and families from across the state. But the crowd fell silent when the announcer stepped to the microphone. "For extraordinary courage, unwavering instinct, and service to the truth, we present the Hero's Medal of Valor to K-9 Duke, whose actions directly led to the recovery of a missing child and the arrest of a dangerous criminal." The audience erupted in applause. Duke didn't bark. He didn't flinch. He just stood beside Emily, his ears up, his eyes clear, the medal heavy on his collar. He wasn't just a dog anymore. He was a symbol. After the ceremony, they were approached by a woman holding her young son's hand. The boy wore a little police costume, complete with a plastic badge and a tiny stuffed German shepherd tucked under his arm. "Can we say hi to the real hero?" the boy asked. Emily knelt and nodded. "He'd love that." The boy reached out, and Duke gently nudged his nose into the boy's palm. "Is he magic?" the boy whispered. "No," Emily said, smiling, "just brave." News outlets picked up the story nationally. The dog who found the truth. K-9 hero uncovers hidden safe, rescues teen. How one bark changed everything. It became more than a headline. It became a lesson. In police academies, they now taught the case as an example of canine instinct and investigative trust. In psychology circles, Emily's testimony became a source of strength for other survivors. And in small towns across America, families started looking at their dogs differently, because sometimes they see what we don't. One Saturday afternoon, Emily and Keller met again at a local park, the same one where the town had held a candlelight vigil for Emily when she was still missing. Now families played frisbee on the grass. Children laughed. The same gazebo that once held tearful prayers now hosted a craft fair and lemonade stand. Emily sat on the bench, sipping iced tea. Duke curled at her feet. "He doesn't bark anymore," she said. "That's a good thing," Keller replied. "It means the walls don't have secrets now." Keller nodded. "It means he trusts this place." They watched as an older man approached with his grandson. The boy pointed at Duke. "Is that the hero dog?" he asked. Emily smiled. "He sure is." The man paused. "You know, I followed your story every night. My sister went missing in the 80s. They never found her." "I'm sorry," Emily said softly. The man looked down. "Thank you. I just wanted to say what you did what he did, gave people like me hope that someone's still looking. Emily placed her hand on Duke's back. He always is, she said. That night, Emily found an old photo of her and Molly, one she'd once tucked away, too painful to look at. This time, she framed it. She hung it in the hallway of her new apartment, right above Duke's water bowl. And sometimes, when the light hit it just right, it looked like both girls were finally safe, like a chapter had closed, not forgotten, but healed. In the end, justice didn't roar. It breathed, in a girl who painted again, in a mother who listened this time, in a town that learned not to look away, and in a dog who never did. From all of us at Heroes for Animals, thank you for following this powerful journey with us. A story of instinct, survival, and the quiet heroism that can change lives. If this story moved you, we'd love for you to subscribe and be part of our growing community of animal lovers and justice seekers. Now we'd love to hear from you. Do you believe animals can sense truths we miss? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to hug your dog a little tighter tonight.